Hey everyone, this is Michael again, and welcome to the AEW Dynamite review. Dynamite tonight was from the Target Center in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And this was Quake by the Lake, as what they were calling tonight's Dynamite tonight. And the show just ended, and this show was fucking awesome tonight. This was a great show. We had the first hour of the show. It was just intense and crazy, chaotic. We had Darby Allin versus Brody King in a Coffin match to kick off the show. We also had a Tornado Tag Team match where it was Andrade, El Idolo, and Roosh versus Penta, Oscuro, and Fenix. We saw Luchasaurus in action, where he ended up taking on Anthony Henry. We also saw the TBS Championship on the line. Jade Cargill defend the title against Madison Rayne, who made her debut last week in AEW. And then in the main event, it was Moxley versus Jericho for the Interim AEW World Championship. And also, we saw the return, an unexpected return of CM Punk. So it was great to see Punk return. You know, he's been out with his injury. But that sets up what we're going to see at All Out. It's going to be Moxley versus Punk, where the AEW World Championship is going to be on the line. So there you go. Awesome Dynamite it was tonight. Just great show. But anyways, let's jump right in with the review. So Dynamite, Quake by the Lake, opened up tonight with the Coffin match. Darby Allin versus Brody King. What a good match this was. Awesome match. Very chaotic. And Brody King, he ended up coming out first. And then we had Darby Allin end up coming out of nowhere. And he jumped Brody King. So Darby Allin ended up sending Brody into the corner. And then Darby ended up hitting Brody with a skateboard, which was covered in thumbtacks. So he ended up driving Brody's face into the thumbtacks on the skateboard. And right from the get-go, Brody King starts bleeding. And he's bleeding like crazy. He was bleeding like a faucet. He was crazy bleeding. So Brody then ended up hitting a right hand. He ended up sending Darby Allin flying over the table in the timekeeper's area. Brody then ended up breaking Darby's skateboard with the tacks on it. And Darby ended up attacking Brody from behind. Both Brody and Darby Allin ended up climbing to the top turnbuckle. Darby ended up gorging Brody's eyes. He ended up breaking Brody's eyes. So Darby ended up managing to hit the Avalanche Code Red onto Brody. And both Brody and Darby end up heading to the outside. Brody then ended up sending Darby into the barricade and then delivered a super kick to Darby. Brody ended up whipping Darby Allin into the opposite barricade, and he ended up sending Darby over the barricade. He ended up wiping the blood off his head. Brody then ended up setting up tables on the outside, and he laid Darby Allin on top of the table. Brody ended up going up to the top, and he ended up going for the splash. Darby Allin moved off the table, and Brody just crashed through the table. And then we had the lights end up going out in the arena. And, of course, you all know that Malachi Black and Buddy Matthews were going to be out there. And that's exactly those two who came out, Malachi Black and Buddy Matthews, as the lights came back on. So both Malachi and Buddy Matthews shielded Brody King. Julia Hart then ended up causing a distraction to Darby. She ended up grabbing Darby's foot. So that allowed Buddy Matthews to deliver a chop block to Darby Allin. Malachi Black then ended up setting Darby Allin up on a table in the corner, and Brody then delivered the cannonball to Darby Allin, which broke the table. So Buddy Matthews then opened up the coffin, so Darby Allin could be in it. But as soon as Buddy Matthews opened up the coffin, Sting ended up appearing. Sting was in the coffin, and he jumped out. He ended up attacking Buddy Matthews, and that was great. Of Sting just appearing in the coffin out of nowhere and just attacking Buddy Matthews. So then Malachi Black ended up grabbing Sting's bat, and he was staring him down. Sting ended up going after Malachi Black, and we had both Malachi Black and Sting end up staring each other down at the top of the ramp, which was great. Loved that spot there where both guys were just staring each other down. So Darby Allin then delivered a cannonball to Brody King. So Brody then ended up sending Darby into the barricade, but Darby ended up fighting Brody King off with the chain, with Brody's chain. Darby ended up wrapping Brody King's chain around him, started choking Brody with the chain off the apron. So Brody then passed out, and he ended up just falling right into the coffin. The coffin lid shut by itself, and there you go. Darby Allin ended up winning the match. So Darby is 3-0 in coffin matches. But overall, this was a very good match, very chaotic and bloody because of Brody King bleeding profusely like a faucet. You had, at a beginning part of the match, Darby Allin was covered in Brody's blood on him, and it was just a crazy match. But overall, very good match. And then we saw Jon Moxley. Jon Moxley appeared backstage. He kept saying that the Interim AEW World Championship is about pain and how much he can endure. So Moxley ended up saying that the Lionheart, Chris Jericho, is the last true survivor of the Heart Dungeon, and he wants to find out how much pain he can endure. So pretty much that was basically what Moxley had to say. But that was the main event of Dynamite tonight. Moxley versus Jericho for the Interim AEW World Championship. And then as Dynamite came back from the commercial, we saw Chris Jericho backstage. Jericho ended up saying that he'll beat Moxley. He ended up telling Moxley to be careful of what he wishes for. He ended up saying that Stu Hart caused him pain he never wanted to think about again. So Jericho ended up saying that you can heal a cut, but you can't fix what he's going to do to Moxley. So Jericho ended up saying that he will be the next AEW World Champion. So there you go. So we heard from both sides, the guys, Moxley and Jericho, before heading to their main event match later on in the night. And then we saw the Tornado Tag Team match. It was the Lucha Brothers, Rey Fenix and Penta Oscuro, versus Rush and Andrade El Idolo. And of course, the Lucha Brothers came out along with Alex Abrahantes. Andrade and Rush came out along with Jose. But this was a crazy, chaotic match. Just really enjoyed this. And these guys gave it all they got. The Lucha Brothers and Rush and Andrade in this match. It was just crazy back and forthness from these guys. But speaking of Andrade and Roosh, they're going to be competing in the Trios Championship Tournament, which is taking place next week on Dynamite. And also, Roosh's brother, Dragon Lee, is going to be teaming with, his brother Roosh and Andrade in the Trios Championship Tournament. And they're going to be taking on the Young Bucks and a mystery guy. And calling now, that mystery guy teaming with the Bucks is going to be Kenny Omega. I think we'll be seeing the return of Kenny Omega next week. And it's going to be Andrade, Roosh, and Dragon Lee versus the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega. So that is how I see it. But we're getting Dragon Lee on AEW television. And that's good because loved the match that him and his brother Roosh had at Ring of Honor Death Before Dishonor. Just a great match that was. If you guys haven't watched that match, if you didn't watch Ring of Honor Death Before Dishonor, definitely check out that match between Roosh and his brother Dragon Lee. Just absolutely fantastic match. But we had the match ended up starting. We had the Lucha Brothers and Andrade and Roosh. They started brawling. Penta ended up pinning Roosh after flying off the top rope. Roosh then delivered a power slam to Penta. Andrade ended up sending Fenix into Penta. And then they end up trying to pin both Penta and Fenix. So both Fenix and Penta end up kicking out. Andrade and Roosh sent them out of the ring, and they end up flying over the top rope. Roosh ended up sending Fenix into the barricade. And then as Dynamite came back from the commercial, we saw Penta end up hitting a Cazador DDT on Roosh. We have Fenix end up delivering a Hurricanrana to Andrade, as Penta end up delivering a backstabber to Andrade. So it was a nice combo there. So we had Fenix and Penta end up double teaming on Andrade with a Cazador Splash combo, which was good. And then Penta end up going for the cover. Andrade end up kicking out. Penta end up sending Fenix into Andrade. And we saw both the Lucha Brothers end up hitting a double thrust kick to Andrade and Roosh, which sent them to the outside. So Penta and Fenix end up flying over the top rope. And they end up taking out both Andrade and Roosh. So I mean, Penta and Fenix are just great, very talented guys in the ring, very entertaining. So both the Lucha Brothers end up sending Andrade back into the ring. Fenix was looking to go for the frog splash off the top, and Andrade ended up getting his knees up. And he was looking to go for a thrust kick. Andrade was looking to go for that. And Fenix ended up moving out of the way. And Andrade ended up hitting Roosh by mistake. So Andrade ended up hitting the thrust kick to Roosh by mistake. Andrade ended up hitting the doubled knees in the corner on Penta. Roosh then hit the powerbomb on Fenix. Penta then ended up hitting the cutter on Roosh. And I loved this spot in the match here. We had Penta hitting a Kamajori on Roosh, and Penta followed that up with a destroyer to Andrade on the apron. Just a great spot that was. And we had Penta end up getting Roosh, and Roosh ended up countering with a knee. Roosh ended up hitting a headbutt on Fenix, and Roosh tied Penta's mask onto the middle rope. So Penta was looking to escape. Roosh then ended up hitting the missile dropkick and a pile driver, and also Andrade ended up double nodding Penta's mask. So how Penta got out was he ended up unmasking himself to break up the pin. Alex Abrahantes then tossed Penta an extra mask. And we saw a little bit of Penta's face. He ended up covering his face like that. So we saw, half of his face. So, like I said, Abrahantes ended up tossing Penta an extra mask. And Andrade ended up putting his foot on Penta. And he ended up delivering a series of kicks to Fenix. You had Andrade end up tossing the Penta mask into the crowd. So Roosh then came in. He delivered the bullhorns to Fenix. And so Andrade then ended up hitting the Hammerlock DDT to Fenix. He ended up going for the cover. And there you go. Andrade, El Idolo, and Roosh end up winning the match. Very crazy match this was. Very chaotic and just entertaining. Very physical match. Fenix unmasking himself, was good. I like that we saw like half of his face, and then he covered up, another side of his face. And that destroyer from Penta to Andrade on the apron, that was a good spot there. So very crazy, but very good match this was. These guys worked really well, Andrade, Roosh, and the Lucha Brothers, and it was a very entertaining match. And then we saw the Young Bucks. The Young Bucks were backstage. They ended up approaching the Dark Order and Hangman Page. So the Bucks ended up thanking Page for saving them last week. Because, of course, last week the Undisputed Elite ended up turning on the Bucks. And that's when Page ended up coming out to save them. So Matt ended up saying that they aren't proud of how the Undisputed Elite treated him. He ended up saying that his favorite time in his career was when him, his brother Nick, and Page were together. Matt Jackson ended up saying that things got weird when they headed to AEW, and he apologized to Page. Matt ended up saying that he was proud when Page won the AEW World Championship, but couldn't get the courage to tell him. He ended up saying that he can never get those years back. He ended up saying that while they might be bad people, Page brings out the good in them. So Matt then ended up asking Page to be their Trios partner in the Trios Championship Tournament. So Page ended up saying that while he would love to, he can't, because they weren't there for him. The Bucks weren't there for him. So he ended up saying that the Dark Order were, and he wants to have their back. So Page ended up saying that he'll be in their corner and not in the tournament. So Matt ended up saying to Page, it's cool. And so the Bucks end up walking away. They were, very upset that Page ended up turning them down to be in the tournament for the Trios Championship. But that was basically that. But you all know where this is headed. Kenny Omega is returning next week. Kenny Omega is going to be the Bucks' partner. So, and speaking of the AEW Trios Championship Tournament, I have the bracket here. So this is what the bracket looks like. So this is what the AEW World Trios Championship Tournament bracket looks like. It's going to take place next week on Dynamite. And then the tournament's going to conclude at All Out, where we're going to crown the first ever Trios champions. So we're going to be seeing the Death Triangle versus Will Ospreay and Aussie Open. Will Ospreay, he's just that good in the ring, very entertaining. So yeah, more Will Ospreay on AEW television, which is good. And then we're going to be seeing Andrade, El Idolo, Dragon Lee, and Roosh versus the Young Bucks. And, it's going to be Kenny Omega, so we're going to be seeing that next week on Dynamite. We're going to have the House of Black taking on the Dark Order. And then the Trustbusters versus the Best Friends. So that's your bracket for the AEW World Trios Championship Tournament. So there you go. That's the bracket for the Trios Championship Tournament. Should be a good tournament. So very much looking forward to it. Even though you have some teams left out of the tournament that could have been in it. But still, I think the tournament's going to deliver, as always. And then we had a squash match, Luchasaurus versus Anthony Henry, which Jungle Boy was on commentary for the match. So Luchasaurus ended up winning. Post-match, Christian Cage ended up appearing on the screen. Christian Cage ended up saying that he was going to rip Jungle Boy's headset off. But Minneapolis doesn't deserve to see him. Jungle Boy then ended up getting up from the commentary table. He went to the back to find Christian Cage. Jungle Boy ended up finding Christian backstage, and security ended up holding Jungle Boy back. And then Luchasaurus ended up coming back there. He ended up taking down the security. And also Pat Buck was there. And Luchasaurus headbutted Pat Buck, which was hilarious. Pat Buck, he was once in WWE. He left after WrestleMania this year. And then he went to AEW that week, that Wednesday, after WrestleMania week. So there you go. This Christian Cage, Jungle Boy, feud is heating up, and we're going to see their match at All Out. So it should be a good match there between the both of them. And then we saw Miro. Miro was backstage, and Julia Hart ended up approaching him. Julia Hart ended up telling Miro to embrace the darkness like she did. So Miro ended up telling her that only one woman can touch him, and he now knows his path is to destroy the House of Black. So that was pretty much what Miro had to say. And then we went backstage and we saw Powerhouse Hobbs with Mark Henry. A rare Mark Henry sighting on Dynamite. Usually we see Mark Henry, on Rampage, just interviewing the main event, the guys who are in the main event, and then Mark Henry going, "It's time for the main event." Very rare sighting for Mark Henry on Dynamite tonight. So we had QT Marshall and his factory end up approaching Hobbs. And he ended up saying that they can take care of Ricky Starks. So Hobbs ended up telling the factory and QT Marshall not to make his problem theirs. Oh, and now Cole Carter is with QT Marshall in the factory. And then Nick Comoroto looked like he was dressed as Tony D'Angelo. So they're taking a shot at Tony D'Angelo because Cole Carter was with Tony D'Angelo when he was in NXT, when he was known as Troy 2 times Donovan. So yeah, taking a shot at Tony D'Angelo there, as Nick Comoroto was dressed up as. So that was pretty much basically that. And then we had Jay Lethal, Sanjay Dutt, and Great Value, Great Khali, Satnam Singh. They were in the ring. Sanjay Dutt got on the mic. He ended up saying that he is on a high after Battle of the Belts 3. He ended up saying they did the unthinkable to Wardlow, and that they aren't done with him yet. Jay Lethal ended up saying that they will come find him again if he doesn't come to them for the TNT Championship. So Wardlow then ended up coming out. Wardlow ended up saying that they can get their title shot if he can beat all 3 of them. So FTR ended up coming out. FTR ended up returning tonight. So they ended up joining They end up joining Wardlow. And then Jay Lethal, Sanjay Dutt, and Satnam Singh retreated out of the ring. And so we had all the guys staring down one another. Jay Lethal ended up trying to attack from behind, but Wardlow ended up catching Jay Lethal. FTR ended up delivering the big rig to Jay Lethal. And pretty much that was basically that. So Jay Lethal looks like he wants his shot at Wardlow for the TNT Championship. And that should be coming soon. And then we saw Tony Schiavone. Tony Schiavone was backstage. He was interviewing the Jericho Appreciation Society, Matt Menard, Angelo Parker, Daniel Garcia, and Anna Jay. Anna cringe because of them portraying her on television, going, "Oh, I'm going to choke you out. I'm going to choke you out." It is absolutely fucking awful to the point where I want to mute the TV every time she's on. She is absolutely terrible with this whole, "I'm going to choke you out. I'm going to choke you out." Absolutely terrible. So Matt Menard and Angelo Parker were talking to Tony Schiavone. They were talking up Jericho's inevitability victory, and that they have a little bit of the bubbly for later on. And Daniel Garcia ended up saying that he owns Bryan Danielson because he is the Dragon Slayer. And of course, Anna Cringe ended up just coming back with some girl choking her out and screaming. Absolutely fucking awful. This was just cringe, this whole thing. Absolute cringe. And then we had Aaron Solo versus Ricky Starks. This was a squash match. Ricky Starks ended up winning the match. He ended up spearing Aaron Solo. And that was basically that. Post-match, Nick Comoroto headed down to the ring. He had a chair in hand. Starks ended up hitting the spine buster to Comoroto. Aaron Solo ended up attacking Ricky Starks from behind. And Starks ended up going through the crowd. And the other members of the factory ended up chasing after Starks. And that was basically that. But overall, this was a squash match, an easy win for Ricky Starks. So we had, we saw Powerhouse Hobbs. He ended up smashing a TV backstage because he was angry that Ricky Starks ended up winning the match. So it's going to continue, this feud that was set up, last week with Starks and Hobbs. And we're possibly going to see that at All Out. And then we had the Gun Club, Austin Colton and Billy Gunn. They were interviewed by Lexi Nair. Billy Gunn ended up asking Austin and Colton how they would single-handed ruin a match that he created, which was, of course, the dumpster match. Stokely Hathaway ended up approaching them. Stokely Hathaway ended up approaching Austin and Colton and offered them his card. And so Billy Gunn ended up telling Stokely Hathaway to have a bad day. So Stokely Hathaway ended up walking off. Billy ended up saying that he made a match for his boys on Rampage. And then Danhausen ended up walking in. And he ended up saying that he can't wait to meet him in the ring with the big bearded guy. Which that guy is, of course, Eric Redbeard, aka Eric Roman, when he was in WWE. So we're going to be seeing Eric Redbeard again on AEW television. So that's going to be cool to see. We're going to be seeing that Friday on Rampage. And then we saw the Best Friends and Orange Cassidy. They were approached by the Trustbusters, Ari Daivari, Parker Boudreaux, and Slim J. So Ari Daivari ended up offering Orange Cassidy a spot in the Trustbusters to launch him into superstardom. And Daivari ended up saying that Orange Cassidy should answer his phone. Orange Cassidy ended up turning the offer down from Daivari. So Ari Daivari ended up saying to Orange Cassidy that he'll find out firsthand what happens when you say no to him. So that was pretty much basically that. But the Trustbusters are going to be taking on the Best Friends in the Trios Championship Tournament. Parker Boudreaux, very happy to see him back on TV. He was in NXT when he was known as Harland, and he shaved his head. But very glad to see him on AEW television after WWE ended up releasing him. So very much looking forward to the match with the Trustbusters and the Best Friends in the Trios Championship Tournament, and see what Parker Boudreaux could bring to AEW. As he's in the Trustbusters with Slim J and Arya Daivari. And then we had Jade Cargill versus Madison Rayne, TBS Championship on the line. Jade Cargill defending the title. And this was a solid match. Madison Rayne ended up making her AEW debut last week on Rampage. It was the first time I seen Madison Rayne in the ring. Haven't watched any of her matches, but she was pretty good in the match last week against Layla Gray, to which she won the match, Madison Rayne. But like I said, this was a solid match, but you had Madison Rayne carrying Jade Cargill through the match. But Jade Cargill ended up pushing Madison Rayne. Rayne delivered a forearm before Cargill delivered a kick to Rayne's midsection. Rayne then delivered a drop kick to Cargill, sent her to the outside. Rayne ended up looking to go for a knee off the apron. Jade Cargill ended up getting Rayne up. Rayne ended up delivering a hurricanrana and sent Cargill into the barricade. Cargill ended up getting back into the ring, and Rayne ended up following her. So Cargill then delivered a suplex to Rayne, tossed her across the ring. So Jade Cargill was just showing off. She was doing push-ups, and then she delivered a kick to Rayne's midsection. At the end of the match, Cargill ended up hitting Jaded on Madison Rayne. She ended up going for the cover, and there you go. Jade Cargill ended up winning the match and retained the TBS Championship. So now Jade Cargill is 36-0, still undefeated. Post-match, Athena went into the ring. Athena was disguised as a baddie, and she ended up attacking Cargill out of nowhere with some forearms. Kiera Hogan ended up pulling Cargill out of the ring, and pretty much that was basically that. You had Athena end up pulling up the TBS Championship. But that was that. Overall, this was a solid match between Cargill and Madison Rayne, even though we all knew that Jade Cargill was going to retain the TBS Championship. And then we saw Toni Storm and Thunder Rosa. Of course, they're known as Thunderstorm. They were backstage, being interviewed, and Toni Storm, is the number one contender because Chris Statlander is injured. So Toni Storm being the number one contender for the AEW Women's World Championship. And Chris Statlander being injured, this is a kayfabe injury because there is no word on Chris Statlander being injured, being fully legit injured. So they're just playing this off as a kayfabe injury. So Thunder Rosa ended up saying that this isn't what she wanted, but these things happen. Toni Storm ended up saying that she's going to keep her momentum going and win the Women's World Championship. So Thunder Rosa ended up saying that she'll be in her corner. But as for the title, she was like, well, we'll talk about that later. So it's going to be Thunder Rosa versus Toni Storm for the AEW Women's World Championship. I think Thunder Rosa is going to go heel on Toni Storm. That's how the way I see it. But should be a good match when it happens. And then we got matches that we're going to see on Rampage and also on Dynamite next week. Of course, we're going to be seeing the AEW Trios Championship Tournament start next week. And we're going to see, of course, the Gun Club in action on Rampage. And then we're going to be seeing also on Rampage Sammy Guevara and his new wife, Tay Conti, which they got married over the weekend. So congrats to the both of them. And Tay Conti is going by a new name. She's going by Tay Mello. Yeah, that's her new name, Tay Mello. Hey Tay, can you get me a Mellow Yellow? I'll pay you $1 for it. Haven't had a Mellow Yellow in a while. If you guys don't know what Mellow Yellow is, it's a citrus soda made with lemon, lime, and orange flavors in it. Very good stuff, Mellow Yellow is. But it's very hard to find. You possibly find it at a store or online. I think the only store you can find it at is at Dollar General. But I haven't had Mellow Yellow in a while, but really liked it last time that I had it. It's good stuff. So, but Tay, give me a Mellow Yellow. And also next week on Dynamite, we're going to be seeing Bryan Danielson versus Daniel Garcia in a best of 2 out of 3 falls match. So that's going to be a good match there. We're going to see Ricky Starks versus Nick Comoroto next week. Obviously, that's going to be an easy win for Starks. And then we're going to be seeing the first match in the AEW Trios Championship Tournament. Andrade El Idolo, Roosh, and his brother Dragon Lee versus the Young Bucks. And, of course, it's going to be Kenny Omega return. And so Kenny Omega is going to be teamed with the Bucks to take on Andrade, Roosh, and Dragon Lee. Main event. The Interim AEW World Championship was on the line. Jon Moxley defended the title against Lionheart Chris Jericho. And this was a very good match here. William Regal was on commentary here, of course. And as soon as the bell rang, Jericho ended up giving Moxley the finger. He flipped off Moxley. Jericho ended up hitting a couple of arm drags on Moxley. And then the two of them end up blocking up. Jericho ended up getting Moxley into a headlock. And Moxley ended up escaping. Moxley ended up hitting some chops to Jericho. Moxley ended up hitting Jericho with a kick to his back. And Jericho ended up firing back with a kick to Moxley's back. Jericho then ended up pulling Moxley's earring out of his ear, which was crazy. So he ended up hitting a drop kick to Moxley, which sent him to the outside. Jericho had Moxley's earring in his hand. He started gluing to the camera. And Jericho ended up tossing Moxley back into the ring. Ended up kicking him in the corner. Moxley ended up hitting some chops on Jericho. And then Jericho ended up sending him down to the mat. Of course, Moxley was bleeding in the match. You can't have a Moxley match without him bleeding. So Moxley delivered a clothesline to Jericho out of the corner. And Jericho ended up hitting a double underhook backbreaker to Moxley, and he followed that up with a lariat. Jericho then went for the lion salt to Moxley, ended up going for the pin, and Moxley kicked out. Jericho then ended up hitting some elbows on Moxley's face, to which Moxley ended up matching to counter into an ankle lock on Jericho. So Jericho ended up hitting a double kick on Moxley before Moxley ended up hitting a German suplex. So we had Jericho end up hitting Moxley's foot on the ring post, and he wrenched into the figure 4 lock on the ring post. So Moxley then ended up managing to lock in the crossface on Jericho. Jericho ended up escaping out of the crossface and locked in the walls of Jericho on Moxley. Moxley then ended up managing to escape the walls of Jericho. So Moxley then delivered a springboard, which sent Jericho out of the ring. He followed up by diving double sledge off the top turnbuckle, which was good. So the crowd was just really liking the match, chanting, "This is awesome." Jericho then began to rip the pads off the turnbuckles. And Sammy Guevara ended up tossing Floyd, the bat, Jericho's bat, to him. So Jericho ended up hitting Moxley in the head with Floyd, the bat. And Jericho ended up going for the cover. And Moxley ended up kicking out. So Moxley ended up getting the sleeper hold on Jericho. Jericho ended up fighting Moxley off. And he ended up throwing Moxley into the exposed turnbuckle. And then Jericho hit the Judas effect. He ended up going for the cover. Moxley kicked out of the Judas effect, which was crazy. So Jericho ended up getting the AEW World Championship, the Interim AEW World Championship, and Moxley ended up sidestepping Jericho right into the post because Aubrey Edwards ended up berating Jericho for having the belt. So Moxley ended up applying the sleeper hold. Jericho was busted open now, of course, so both guys were bleeding. So Moxley ended up shifting into the bulldog choke, and Jericho was able to counter elbows because Moxley was throwing overhead elbows. So the Lion Tamer was on Moxley. So Moxley ended up neck twisting and distorts Jericho. And Jericho ended up tapping out. And so there you go. Jon Moxley ended up winning the match and retains the Interim AEW World Championship. Post-match, Sammy Guevara and Jake Hager end up attacking Moxley. We had the Blackpool Combat Club, Wheeler Yuta, and also Ortiz, Claudio Castagnoli, Eddie Kingston end up coming down. And then Daniel Garcia, Matt Menard, Angelo Parker end up coming down. So we got a brawl between all these guys. And then we had the return of CM Punk. And the crowd erupted when CM Punk came out. CM Punk comeback tonight was so unexpected. He was out with his injury. So he ended up coming out and he ended up attacking the JAS. He ended up sending them out of the ring. He clotheslined Jericho out of there. And only Moxley and Punk were the only two men in the ring. And the crowd cheered very loud for Punk. And we had Moxley and Punk ended up coming down face to face. They were staring each other down, which I really liked. This was awesome here. And this sets up their match for All Out. It's going to be Punk versus Moxley. We're going to have a unification match with the Interim AEW World Championship and the AEW World Championship. And, of course, Punk is going to win, of course, the World Championship. Because, he never lost it. So we had Moxley end up giving Punk the finger. He flipped off Punk. He ended up shoulder checking Punk as he left the ring. And pretty much that was how Dynamite went off the air tonight. Overall, very good match between Moxley and Jericho. Very physical match. And Punk coming back tonight was just awesome. So unexpected. Overall, Dynamite, very good show tonight. Very entertaining. Yeah. So anyways, that's it for my review of tonight's Dynamite. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed this review. I know I didn't do a Monday Night Raw review on Monday because, of course, I was at the Mets game. It was my first time at Citi Field. Looked awesome. My Mets won 5-1 against the Cincinnati Reds. It was just an awesome time, at Citi Field. Anyways, give the video a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, and I will see you all Friday for SmackDown and AEW Rampage. So, see you then.